All right, so today we're going to be taking a look at a video of a child actress. I think her name is Arden Young, and she tells a story about some of her shocking Hollywood experiences um, in that life, and whatever that looks like. Maybe I'm imagining, some crazy incidents that went on, maybe Hollywood parties, maybe hopefully nothing is to the extreme of some of the stuff that we hear about that happens in Hollywood, especially now with all this stuff coming out with P Diddy and a lot of post Epstein stuff. Hopefully nothing that dramatic, but we're going to take a look at what she has to say, and let's see what some of her experiences are.
So you got into the industry when you were 12, you said? What were your roles like? Like, what kind of jobs did you get?
Yeah, I worked a lot on ABC Family shows. I did Modern Family. I did Blackish, Fresh Off the Boat, The Fosters, a lot of that kind of stuff. I did do a Disney show, some like teen and children's show. I did like NCIS LA, just kind of like the typical network TV shows. And it was fun. Like I had a good time for a lot of my experience, but there came a point when it was just time to go.
Is this true? You beat up the redheaded boy in Modern Family?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a scene where I'm like stuffing dirt in his face.
Ginger side, I see. Okay.
And that was really fun.
What were some of the, I guess, worst things you saw or shocking things you saw while working in Hollywood?
Yeah, a lot of inappropriate things. So as far as my experiences go, like when I was 13, I was in an acting class and the teacher made me and another 13-year-old girl make out with each other a bunch of times
Oh,
for
God.
a
I
scene.
remember this story. Yeah,
Yeah,
multiple takes. Like,
like a
what did you say?
lot
Like
over the
30
course of
or
weeks.
something?
Yeah. Um, and then later he did contact me for sex when I was like,
Yeah, right out of the gates, I can kind of see how this interview is going to go, but we'll obviously watch it. It's only maybe 25 minutes long, so we might be able to watch the whole thing today. Bear with me. I've been getting over a cold, so I might sneeze or cough here and there. But that's something that I think a lot of people don't know that aren't in the industry or haven't had, any experience in the industry in any regard. That type of grooming stuff that actually happens in every aspect of the industry. It's almost like the industry was designed that way, or people are just using the resources to their advantage. Like when you have an acting class and you're the coach, everybody looks up to you because you're the one that they're, learning from. So they're kind of subservient to you. And, this type of stuff happens in every stage and level of the entertainment industry, even in the acting classes, even at the point where, you would think it's just like school. That would be the same thing as a teacher in a school, public school that you go to, making advances towards you. I mean, could you just parallel the two things for a moment? Imagine you have a classroom full of, let's say she's 13 at the time taking acting classes. So that would be like sixth or seventh grade if you go to public school. Imagine the teacher telling two girls, get up in the middle of the class and make out. This is for a science experiment to show that men and women are attracted to each other biologically and women are not. I mean, imagine if something like that happened. The teacher would be arrested. They would probably be charged and convicted, for years in prison, if not life, whatever, who knows. In any other aspect or industry in, our lives, career wise, if somebody, especially an adult, tried to make two underage girls, make out or have some sort of sexual experience, and not to mention in front of the whole class, anywhere else in any other industry, that person would be destroyed. they would lose whatever licenses they had. They would, like I said, probably get jail time, whatever. Their family would probably disown them, or it would be a huge stain on their reputation in their community. But for some reason, when it comes to acting classes and the entertainment industry, it's socially accepted that this type of weird, discussing, pedophilic behavior goes on. And, a lot of parents just throw their children to the wolves, so to speak, by letting them do these things. I mean, there's no reason that a young girl underage, and she said when she was 15, later on, when she was 15, he made advances at her specifically. That means this incident occurred earlier than 15. So let's say she's 13, 14, whatever. I don't remember if she said an age. And in what world where we don't even put that type of content on TV, right? Television shows and movies are a little different because there's ratings and you have to be of a certain age to get into or at least this is how it used to be before the internet and Netflix and stuff. There used to have to be a certain age legally to get into the theater to see that movie. So, movies are a little different. Streaming changed all that now. Unless you put parental controls on, your children have access to see pretty much anything that you can watch on Netflix, Amazon, all these, platforms. But we don't even put that on TV. And she said she did a lot of TV, right? Why, in what world are you preparing this child for a scene where they're going to have to make out with another child? We don't even put that type of content in shows for the most part. Definitely not television shows. I don't even think some of the, back in the day, the cable shows were allowed to be a little bit more, raunchy in their content because you had to pay for it. It was pay-per-view. Yet there was a paywall, like Showtime, HBO, stuff like that. So you had to subscribe to those services in order to see that. But even those, I don't think had anything like that back then, especially, when she was growing up. They didn't allow that type of content. So what world are you preparing her for where a child has to, have a sexual experience to a certain degree with another child of the same gender? That doesn't make any sense other than you're grooming that person. You're grooming them to do things that are uncomfortable for them and don't make any sense to their biology, which opens them up for when you do make advances at them for you. So he was probably grooming her or grooming whatever girls in the class were willing to do this type of training, quote unquote, exercise. He was probably grooming them and saying, oh, well, these two girls are willing to do that. So the next step up is they're probably going to be willing to maybe do things to, me, the teacher. So, it just seems like a grooming thing. But I think a lot of people don't understand this, and it is true. It's in every aspect of that industry. The acting coaches, singing coaches, whatever other type of training, agents, managers, everybody in that industry. And it's actually creeping into the influencer world today, where a lot of social media people now are getting managers and agents to help them advance their career as a social media influencer. And it's the same game over again. They're getting groomed into all of these weird and uncomfortable experiences. A lot of them are getting groomed to actually go into the OnlyFans world of sex work, but they're being groomed by their own agents and managers. It's the same Hollywood story over again. And I don't really see anybody talking about this today, but I actually look at like the internet, YouTube specifically, but also Instagram and some of those platforms, TikTok, where you have people who are trying to make careers out of, this type of stuff where you record content, you put it out there, and they're trying to seek the same type of level of fame that Hollywood people had always seeked by trying to become actors and actresses to get into the entertainment industry. They're seeking that now with the internet and all of these online platforms. And the agents and managers got wind of that. They realized the game was moving. It was shifting from Hollywood to the internet. So all they did was pivot their business plan to include the internet. And now they're basically doing the same thing they did with all of their actors who are in movies and TV shows. They're grooming the next generation of people, the millennials and Gen Z. They're grooming them to, do the same type of things, get into, sexually explicit content, whether it's posting yourself in bikinis or getting into OnlyFans or, God forbid, even pornography and stuff like that. they're grooming them slowly but surely into that same path that a lot of these Hollywood people went. And this is why you have things like the P. Diddy stuff coming out, the Epstein stuff that came out a few years ago. This stuff is the same game. It's just moving to another area of society. So that a lot of that is going on now with YouTube, and it's been going on for years, but it's definitely probably at a peak right now with YouTube and stuff like that. All these different platforms. It's the same game. So it's funny because not funny, but it's actually sad to see that she's starting the story off with her being a child and being in acting classes, a place that's supposed to be a quote unquote safe space where you can go and learn and make mistakes and be vulnerable, put yourself out there, and you're not worried about a job saying, oh, you didn't get the part, like in an audition. It's a place where you're supposed to feel comfortable to be vulnerable and be yourself. And even there, you can't be comfortable. The teacher is exploiting you. So, for anybody who is looking to seek fame, don't seek fame. If you want to create content, I don't see anything wrong with that. Obviously, I do it. Create content, but create content that can put a message out there that people can either learn from or benefit them in some way in their life. But don't seek fame. Don't seek fortune. Don't seek the things of this world. Use your skills and tools to help better the world. So we're going to, that's just a quick little life lesson for some of the younger people, especially Gen Z, who may be getting into this type of world. Be careful and don't let people groom you. I know that's easier said than done because, life just unfolds sometimes, but just these are the things to look out for. So let's continue with what she has to say.
16. So really creepy, lots of creepy stuff like that. I was molested by a photographer, known me since I was 15. Super, super
Oh
messed up.
God. How old were you when that
I
happened?
was 20. So I was an adult, but
Still. Yeah.
yeah, I was mentally a kid. I felt like, lots of messed up stuff, like hyper sexualization of everyone, including children. I had a friend who was 14 years old who was kissed on the mouth by a man in his 40s during a photo shoot.
What was the context for that? Like,
He was
how
the
did that?
photographer, and he, in between shots, he came up to her and kissed her on the mouth, and he started
Just out of
taking,
nowhere? Just like,
he started
hey.
taking more photos of her, and he said, "Yeah, that's the look I wanted." So in his mind, or his outward explanation for it was like, "I wanted to shock you, and
Oh, so
I
he's trying to
wanted
get
that look."
a reaction out of her to make a certain face. So that's how he justifies kissing her. Ugh, wow.
Yeah. Yep. So many messed up things, like just in acting classes, having to act out scenes that were way adult, things that kids should not experience during childhood. We would have to be acting out in scenes, and I was even told by acting coaches, like, hey, you're just too innocent for the scene, like not really doing it right, so you might need to go out and gain some real world experience and then come back and try it again.
At how
And
old
so
were you told this?
all throughout my
From
childhood,
from
like,
basically 11 to
I mean,
maybe.
yeah, the times that I distinctly remember being told that by someone, I was like 15, 16, and 17, and it was just like, now looking back and realizing I was so guilted into thinking like I'm not a good enough actor. I'm not like mature enough, whatever. I don't understand things. Looking back and realizing like it was because I shouldn't, not because it was my fault. And the fact that I went out and tried to do things I wasn't comfortable with based on what an acting teacher had told me is like, it just makes me cringe. It makes me so sad for my younger.
Yeah, I feel that way too when I look back at like things that happened to me when I was younger. Why do you think the industry is that way? Because the competitive nature of Hollywood or the biz, just like, well, you're replaceable. Well, it's the other people waiting to take your spots. So you got to do
Yeah.
whatever it takes.
There's just this whole attitude attitude, like this unified attitude in the industry where it's like the more messed up, uh, like the thing you're doing in a scene, the more messed up it is, the more raw and amazing and Oscar worthy. And that's real acting. The more messed up it is. And then the more wholesome something is, they're like, oh, that's cute. Have fun
Like
on
it's
Hallmark.
easier or something, like it's less of an acting challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when it comes down to it, it's an industry for adults. It caters to adults.
One thing I will add, that's been true in Hollywood for a long time, but I think the tide is finally starting to turn. I think that a lot of wholesome things are starting to become popular again. If you look at how over the last maybe like 15 years, the Lifetime channel had become extremely popular with women because they just wanted to watch wholesome things, even though a lot of it was the same repetitive story over and over again, just, rewritten to, change a couple details and keep it kind of fresh. And then eventually Lifetime got weird and Hallmark picked up that same model. And they ran with it, and still till today, there are tons of women that just love watching Hallmark movies, even though a lot of them are very simple or cheesy or very predictable. They just like that comfort of a nice, wholesome story, especially like a, soft love story, nothing too graphic, just something where there's a little romance involved, real world type things that you would, life would be like and kind of used to. But now I see a lot of Christian movies and shows, especially with The Chosen, becoming extremely popular again. I mean, The Chosen has done more in terms of, viewership and financial return on their money than I think like any Christian product possibly in history, aside from Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. I think they might be like first or second in terms of all of that stuff. It is a extremely popular series, and there are a lot more movies like that that are coming out now. There's even a great app called PureFlix, uh, which they might have changed the name now. I think it might be the Great American PureFlix, but I'm not sure either way. They have a ton of like wholesome and Christian, but not just Christian, like wholesome content on there, things that you would see on Hallmark. And, that is becoming more and more popular today. People are looking for that type of stuff. Look at Angel Studios, how they blew up in the last couple of years, and they're putting out movies that are good quality. They're well written. They're well produced. They're made, into good, watchable films. They don't look like student films. But they're, based all around wholesome content. And that is becoming more and more popular today. Sound of Freedom, one of their movies, it did a lot. It did really well at the box office. It broke some records that it beat out, I think, every movie that was running at that same time in July of either 23 or 24. I forget. I think it was 23. But yeah, there is a demand for wholesome content again. So I'm glad to see that a lot of people, viewers, are moving away from that type of dark content. There are still plenty of people who like that type of stuff, but I am glad to see that there is a building demand for good, wholesome content. And maybe enough people will start their own type of thing where one day it won't be Hollywood runs everything and, everything is dark or has a hidden agenda or a bunch of innuendo. Maybe there will be enough content out there that's wholesome, nice content. Uh, and then, you're always going to have a little bit of the dark side, but hopefully the good will overcome that. So we'll see in the next 10 to 20 years, but I do have hope and I do see the tide turning.
It's full of adults. Uh, and if you're a kid in it, you're around adults all the time. So you are going to become an adult than your average kid. So
And you're working at almost adult hours.
adult hours, I became legally 18 when I was 15 so that they wouldn't have to hire an on-set teacher for me when I was working, and it made me more hireable. Um, and I don't think that like damaged me at all, but it's just a comment on the culture of like the more mature adult you can prove yourself to be, the more they're going to hire you.
Did your parents kind of help you? Were they kind of like stage parents? Did they help you get into the industry? Did you kind of lead the way on wanting to get into the business? And did
I
they have any
begged my parents to let me get into the industry. I had done some like modeling print work before, and I was like, I just really want to be an actor now. I want to take classes. I don't necessarily think I wanted to do it for the right reasons. I think I just thought it was fun, and I wanted to be on screen, and I wanted to see myself on TV. But I begged and begged.
Yeah, that's a good point. She said, I don't think I wanted to do it for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? How many people do you know that want to become a famous actor or writer or director or whatever that don't want to do it for the fame and the publicity and the fortune and things like that that come with that type of lifestyle? So everybody wants to, or even just a childhood dream of, being emulating or being like somebody, following the footsteps of someone that you saw on the big screen or in a TV show when you were younger, and loved that actor or character that they played, and you really decided that's what you wanted to do. Most people, when they get older and they continue to carry out that dream, they're seeking the fame, they're seeking the fortune, and that's kind of the norm. Rarely do you have people who are called, for a purpose, like Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. I mean, people say that performance was like the best performance of a person who depicted Jesus in like all of you know entertainment, all of film and movies and stuff like that, and TV shows over the course of however long people have been making Jesus based content, which is forever. Um, people like that have a calling, or maybe a Daniel Day-Lewis who, gets deep into a character and he plays it to the point where you don't even know that that's Daniel Day-Lewis. You just see him as that character and you're like, who is that? Who is that? Must be a new up and coming actor. But there's a few people far in between that are like that. The rest are seeking the fame and the fortune and all that stuff. So, that's just what every I think person who gets into the industry is kind of hoping for.
My mom and my dad let me do it, but my mom like took me to class, and she was very protective of me. And I think in a lot of these situations that I got into, my mom was very manipulated as well and gaslit to think, well, all these parents sitting next to me are trusting their kids in that room with that teacher. Why would I question that? But she didn't realize that.
Yeah, real quick, it's hard not to stop and comment on a lot of things, but I just see so many things jump out at me. Almost every situation where especially a child actor, was in Hollywood and then, groomed or has some sort of molestation experience or inappropriate experience, almost every time it was, and I say this lightly because, it was a different time back then. People didn't really have the knowledge and experience and technology that we have today. But it was almost always the parents' fault, because the parents would allow them, and I talk about this in another video, but especially with like the baby boomer generation of parents, they would allow their children to kind of be raised by the world. So they would send them to school. The teachers would raise them until they got out of school. And then maybe there was after school programs. And then maybe, they would go out with their friends until it was dinner time. And, the parents would see them in the morning before they went to school, and then at night before bed, and, maybe for dinner or something. They spent the majority of their day out being raised by the world, and then especially now with the government being so intrusive and wanting to be like the parents of everybody, they constantly leaned on the world to raise their kids and acted as though they didn't really know what they were doing. They were just like, yeah, of course, if everybody else is trusting this, I should too. And that's a really bad attitude to have, because that's kind of what gets people into bad situations. And we'll talk about that in other videos, but you really want to trust but verify. And I might even go as far as saying, trust almost no one unless there's people in your circle that you really can trust, and verify everything. Verify as much as you can, because that's how people get tricked and deceived into things that they didn't want to do. But yeah, a lot of times you hear these stories about children. I mean, there was actually a documentary recently on Hulu or one of those apps where it was about child stars who grew up in Nickelodeon and how they were groomed by this producer that was running the show basically there. And a lot of them had stories about, him doing inappropriate things to them. But one of them had a story, and he's a well-known childhood actor who was on many different things. He has stories about him actually being raped by this man and, on multiple occasions and kind of, just totally groomed by him. And he tells stories about how, his parents were, kind of just let him go off and do his own thing with these people. And his, father tried to be involved, but then he was stopped and, he got out of the equation. So a lot of times groomers, especially, and this is 100% confirmed with pedophiles, is, even if they get arrested and interrogated, a lot of times they will admit that they looked for children where the father specifically was either not in their life or a very weak, passive man. Because they knew they could not go after a child that had a strong male presence in their life, boy or girl, didn't matter. Just the focus was the father had to be weak or absent. I'm hearing her right away say her mom was naive to this stuff and then let her, go in and be in with that instructor for how long or whatever. And my mind is thinking, where was her father? Because a lot of this stuff may possibly not have happened. Who knows with destiny, but may possibly not have happened if her father or a strong male role model in her life saw this stuff and put a stop to it early on before it went anywhere further. Now, I don't know this girl and I'm not trying to judge her, but it's just something that I think about because when you hear enough of these grooming stories, you start to put a pattern together and connect the dots and figure out that the common denominator is weak or absent dad equals trafficked or molested children. So fathers, keep that in mind, especially if you have children that are looking to get into this type of industry, Hollywood, social media, whatever. Keep that in mind.
That this teacher was more than comfortable being inappropriate in front of a room of kids, and it was just us kids and him.
What was the process like? It started with classes, or did you have to look for management when you were first?
I started with classes, and then after I'd been in class for a while, I got a manager, got my agent, did my headshot photos, my process. Sometimes people do it in reverse, but my mom said I had to be in classes where I really got serious.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So your mom was a little bit more, she was, yeah, even though she was protective of you, the whole system kind of gaslights and pressure.
Yeah, and I think there's only so much you can do because at the end of the day, like someone targeting your child is a a successful predator is going to befriend the parent. They're going to be really nice to the parent. They know exactly what to say. And I think in a lot of these situations, my mom was totally thrown for a loop, and she looks back and she's shocked now, and I think she feels really bad. But I tell her, like, we were both fooled, and now we know, and it could have been so much worse for me. I was one of the lucky ones. And I learned a lot while I was acting, so I don't regret it.
The story of you having to do like all those takes of you as an underage girl, like kissing that other underage girl, would you say that's probably the worst experience that you had?
As a child, probably the most like humiliating and confusing because that's what I was taught that boys wanted to see. They wanted to see me do stuff with other girls. And that was one of my earliest experiences
What was your
ever in that way.
parents' reaction to like when did they finally found out about that?
Pretty recently. And yeah, I think they're really sad, and I don't want them to feel guilty or anything because the nature of the industry is just so tricky, and I purposefully didn't tell my parents the things that happened to me because I knew what they would say. They would say, "Okay, well, you're done then."
Yeah.
And I was clinging on to acting for so long.
Imagine being able to do more in less time. Wait, scratch that. You can do more in less time. Meet Motion, the ultimate AI
Ugh, yeah, because you're like, well, I don't want. This is like fun, right? This is
Yeah,
what
like
we have
this
to
is my
do to stay in
dream.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you don't think there's any way to get through this process without doing these things. You don't know that they're wrong because
exactly.
you're
And I was told that if I didn't do these things, if I wasn't willing to do these things, I was told to embrace my pervert by
Ugh!
a 40, 50-year-old acting coach man. He was like, I'm one of the most perverted people I know, and you need to embrace your inner pervert. Be okay with that.
Oh
And
my God.
I was so brainwashed. I was brainwashed to think, yeah, this is real acting, like embracing that kind of stuff and portraying that kind of stuff in the scene is
Yeah, they
real
convince you that ignoring boundaries equals
yeah.
talent.
Exactly. And they say, like, okay, well, you're not really doing this. I could tell you're uncomfortable, so you're not uninhibited enough. You really need to free yourself. So you're going to do some more of these.
Yeah, one other thing I'll say on that is anytime anybody tells you to go against your natural instincts, be weary of that because, you know, God has given you a gut instinct for a reason. He wants you to be able to discern from things that are right and wrong. And when somebody's trying to tell you to go against your natural instincts, they're probably trying to get you to do what's wrong, and then get you comfortable with doing what's wrong so that you, like the Bible says, they'll call what's right wrong and wrong right, that you won't be able to tell the difference between right and wrong. You'll just go with whatever way the wind blows you that day. And that's exactly what people who groom people want you to do. That's the type of mind frame they want you to be in. So be weary of people who try to get you to go against your own gut instinct.
Exercises. It's like,
So it's like the kids that get through and become the most successful are the ones that are able to be convinced to cross
do
boundaries,
anything.
ignore their gut. Maybe they have absent parents, or maybe their parents are the ones that are also charmed as well. And yeah,
Yeah.
parents maybe want their kids to live vicariously. They want them to get super famous because they feel good about themselves because of that. And then you look at like all the child actors and you're like, wow, the kids that make it through and get really famous, what have they been made to do?
Yeah. And I think a lot of parents who, I don't know if they're bad people. I think they just might be a little blind to the fact that just because your child is doing something for a scene doesn't make it fake. I think they use that excuse and justification, like, oh, well, it's in a scene, like she's doing that for a scene. It's like, well, she's also still doing it. Like we see
Right,
that,
just like an adult doing a sex scene. Like you're
yeah,
still doing it. You're
yeah, and
still
it's
making
like in
the
the movie Cuties, um, the entertainment industry, Hollywood, was justifying it, saying, well, you need the entire story. Like you're just seeing clips of girls doing things. The whole moral of the story is blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, yeah, but the girls are still being sexualized on screen. They're still doing those acts. You do realize, like, just because there's like an overarching moral of the story doesn't mean like you're not doing those acts. That's still,
And I think your developing child brain cannot tell. It's still going to log that as part of your childhood lived experiences. I don't
yeah,
think
and
in your
you
memory,
get
like, well, that was acting and this was
right.
real
You
life.
get praise for the things you do on screen or in a scene. And I think as a kid, it can be really confusing because you learn, like, oh, when I'm a certain way, when I'm this character, people pay attention to me. And I think that was also very confusing to me, that when when I acted in a more like sexual way, I got a more favorable response from the people around me. So I think I developed a certain persona I would put on even in real life.
Of course, because as a kid, it's a survival mechanism. You're trying to please.
So I want to jump back to a point she was making. So all kinds of stuff. Hollywood is notorious for that because it's not part of the human nature to be able to be a married person and then go to work and I have affairs, but that's just at work. So if I kiss a girl on set or we do a sex scene, even though we're not actually having sex, you're both naked in a bed, that's still performing the act to some degree. That's still adultery, right? And then you go back to your spouse, wife, husband, whatever, and you're supposed to just have a normal marriage because that wasn't me. That was the character I was playing. That is something that is not even logical. Your brain doesn't work that way. And in fact, your heart, your soul, whatever you want to call it, will still hold on to that. It'll subconsciously keep it deep down and struggle with it. It can be done. You can work in Hollywood and make movies and not partake in that type of behavior. I'll give you a perfect example. This guy, Neil McDonough, I think it is, McDonough, he's been in a bunch of things. He's been in the TV show Suits. He's been in a Minority Report, Timeline, that was an old movie, and a bunch of other stuff. He's a well-known character actor in the sense that he always kind of plays the bad guy or the antagonist. And he has said on multiple occasions that he does not do any type of scenes that are related to, sex scenes or kissing even another woman at all. I don't think I've even seen a scene of him in the last however many years or so, decade plus, where he's been in a scene where he's kissed a woman in the scene. And he attributes that to he's married, and just because it's happening on the screen and it's not happening in real life, though that it is still happening in real life, and he doesn't want to cheat on his wife. So he does not do any type of scenes with women in that way in his work. And, Hollywood probably has a problem with that. And I think they have, in some ways, negatively impacted his career. But he's also done a lot of stuff and he's been in a lot of movies and shows. And, he's also been in Christian movies, like I mentioned. And he sticks firm to his beliefs on that. And he works. He's a working actor in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry for a long time now. And he has found a way to do what he loves and not sacrifice his morals. So if you are a, person looking to get into this industry, just know that it can be done. You can do it too. You can work in the industry and, just pick specific roles where they don't go against your moral values. You have to have principles too. And this is something that good acting coaches will teach. You have to have principles and standards. And a good actor will have a bar, have boundaries that they do not cross, that they do not allow people to coax them into because they believe in a certain thing and that's the way they want their career to go. And sometimes that actually works out in your favor because it will allow you to get to where you want to go, but not get groomed along the way. And that's just something that I want people to understand, that you can, if you do decide to work in this industry, you can do it and have standards. A lot of times people, though, they just see the prize and they just want to make the money and get the fame and every door be open for them. So they take every path. And usually that leads to despair at the end of the road. But if you stay firm to your convictions, you can still slowly get there, little by little. Each project, you'll get a little bit more well-known and you'll get more work from that. But let's continue with what she has to say.
That includes your parents. That includes these coaches and photographers, because it's just part of, like, I have to make it through the day, make sure I get enough attention, feel validated, feel safe and secure in my world. And maybe part of it is, I'm helping mom and dad make a living. I'm contributing to the family financially. There are some situations where, like, as the parents are like, you're our only help, like, get in there. Wow. That's a lot for kids. And it's just, it really makes sense for why so many child stars end up kind of just messed up and have a lot of shit to work out in their adult years.
Yeah, there's just no foundation. It's just all like, and I'm generalizing. I'm sure there's exceptions, but what I saw was everyone around me, their entire world was acting and doing whatever it took to be better, to work more. And it didn't matter what it was. So that was the life I was living. There was really no like foundational beliefs that anyone really had other than we embrace all the dark feelings that we have and we let them out in acting class. You need to magnify all your anger and all your shame. What are you most ashamed of? Tell the whole class right now.
Scientology, yeah.
Yeah, no, it really like
You're made to tell the whole class what you're most ashamed of, so now everybody knows about the time you pooped your pants in math or something.
Yeah, I mean, they purposefully will humiliate you in these acting classes to try to free your mind and free your inhibitions. And some of these acting classes are like hardcore, you know what I mean?
Get you comfortable with like being humiliated, and you're like,
Yeah.
well, once we kind of numb away this feeling of like, oh God, I'm ashamed, or like, oh, I don't feel comfortable doing this. Like once that goes away, then you can do whatever.
Yeah. So I just think as a whole, the entire Hollywood system is just trash.
Yeah.
To summarize.
Like it. So what made you stop?
A lot of things kind of happening at once. I think maturing as a person and realizing that the world did not, in fact, revolve around me. There were bigger issues in the world other than my acting career. And I wanted to do something. I wanted to feel like I was contributing to a greater good rather than just Arden's prancing around on screen today. Everyone look at her. So I think that was a big factor. And also I started to have and develop some opinions that were very
Every month, this Airbnb pays me in semi-passive income. Now, here's the thing. I don't own it and I don't pay any rent.
You know, contrary to what the rest of Hollywood believed. And I was questioning things that we were told we should never question. If you even question that, and then you're a horrible racist person or whatever. So I also realized if I stayed in Hollywood, if I obtained the success that I was hoping for, I would never be able to be myself. I would be in a constant state of hiding and lying and pretending to be someone I wasn't. And I just wasn't willing to do that. So
what are some of the ideas? Do you mean ideas around like diversity or like the DEI stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was a time when if you didn't post the black square, then like you weren't an ally.
Yeah.
And you were a horrible person. And
you gotta fall in line with all the
even if you posted the black square, but you didn't have a caption, you didn't like cite a resource in the caption, then you weren't really an ally. You're just taking.
If you're not seen reading White Fragility.
Yeah, and it's like, well, why do I have to do that? So I was like, you know what? This isn't going to change. There's just going to always be the next thing that if I don't jump on and I don't say in the same rehearsed, disingenuous, stupid way, then people are going to come after me and I'm going to lose work. How is this ever be sustainable?
It seems like the hoops never end. And then you look at someone like Gina Carano, same thing. Like it started with her not posting the black square, and then just saying kind of middle of the road takes, like being a conservative is you're attacked the same way like Jews were in the Holocaust, or where she said, and she could like lost her job for it.
Yeah.
This film.
And the roles as I got older, as I started to being asked to audition for, just got darker and darker. There was a lot of like witchcraft, spirituality, demon kind of conjuring type roles, whereas, you know, sexual girl is some witch who's like conjuring demons and she'll seduce someone and take their soul and like just stuff like that. Wow. Where I was like, yeah, I'm not comfortable doing this. I think I got away with going on a lot of and being okay with a lot of the auditions when I was younger, just because the content tended to be a little bit more innocent. Um, like, I was on a Disney show, and that was completely fine. I didn't have issues with any of that. But yeah, as I got older, I started going out for things like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Lucifer and things like that, where I started to really get a pit in my stomach when I would audition for those things.
Wow.
And one day I drew a line and I set my boundaries with my agent, and it was a very short time after that they just dropped me.
Wow. Because do you think they saw you as difficult after
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I think so.
Would you look at the lines that you'd have to rehearse and like the feeling would start to set in? Like, I mean, and you probably did a couple of these auditions before you realized, like, yeah, this really just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it was it didn't feel good. There was even one where I actually had to take Xanax to be able to get through it.
Because you're that nervous
Because
going in.
I was like, this is embarrassing. Like, it was so unnecessarily.
And that's the slippery slope. A lot of times you see Hollywood actors, musicians, whatever, people that are heavy drug addicts. And, it's like culturally accepted. It's cool to be going to rehab and stuff when you're an actor. What you don't realize is there's a reason why they do those drugs. Some of them do it just to party because they like, the fame and, the lifestyle, and they just want to be able to party and drive fast cars and all that stuff. A lot of them do it because it's the only way to numb the pain. It's the only way to get through the day and get through some of the experiences that they either have to go through or that they went through in the past that they're still struggling with the trauma of. So that's that slippery slope. And it's nice to see that this girl found her way out of it. But, you know, that is definitely something that is a catalyst in that industry because you do one thing, you feel guilty about it, and then you start taking drugs to numb the pain. And now you're more open and susceptible to doing all these weird things. And look, it's funny how it always leads to the darkness, right? There's a lot of controversy about around Hollywood being evil, but when everybody's getting coaxed into doing sex stuff and then eventually doing like evil, dark witchcrafts and stuff like that, you have to learn or at least realize to put that pattern together. There's something there, right? It may not be blanketed across the board, but there's something there when every studio or everyone is always trying to get everybody into sex stuff, creepy, weird stuff, stuff like through like the Diddy parties and whatnot, and then eventually demonic, satanic stuff. There's something there. And if you're not a believer, that should be enough to at least pique your curiosity to become a believer or at least go down that path and find out what the truth is and what's really going on. But yeah, a lot of people get into drugs and stuff in that life. All right, let's wrap this up.
Really sexual and like
Wow.
dark, and just that dark spiritual throughout it. I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna get through this unless I take a Xanax.
And it's like of all the scenes they could have you rehearse and audition, it's like they pick something dark and sexual. It's almost like, yeah, we want to see right
Yeah.
away if you have what it takes.
Yeah, it was weird. There was a time span where it was almost exclusively like, oh, you're this supernatural chick who does this, and it's like, why is everything supernatural right now? I'm not comfortable with a lot of these themes, It's not like I'm a fairy princess. It's not what you're asking me to do.
Wow, Lisa says my little sister was watching that show and I was uncomfortable watching the show and I'm the edgy person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't really watch Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but it was a show that like a lot of kids I knew like growing up like just loved. It was like a cult classic and I just was like, all right. I didn't
Yeah,
realize
I
it was so
never
dark.
got into it. Yeah, I never got into it, but I definitely auditioned for it multiple times. And each time I just uh, it was hard to explain. It just felt wrong. I wasn't comfortable with it, and I'm in retrospect, I'm glad that those types of roles didn't work out for me.
Well, it's good that you hadn't numbed your gut feelings to an extent where you could completely ignore them and, like, that you were able to pull yourself out of that. Were you raised, religious at all growing up?
I was raised going to church. I wouldn't say that our household was like super strict in a religious way. But I was not a religious person growing up, but I did go to church. And I kind of had that foundational understanding, awareness of God, and through my teens and early 20s kind of flip-flopped into like a new age system.
Wow. Were you telling your parents about these auditions like, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this because of the content?"
Yeah, I would tell my mom mainly, like, and she would agree with me. She'd be like, "Yeah, then don't do it." There was a lot of stuff I turned down, especially the show Lucifer. There was never a point when I was like, "I'm okay with this."
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar, but like the whole
I
concept.
think, is Mark Pellegrino a lead on that
I
show?
I actually don't know the
He's
actors'
like a
names.
blonde guy. He's, I think, from Lost.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, essentially, they're portraying Lucifer, Satan. He's like come down to earth, and uh, they portray him as like a really likable
He's
character
just like
who's
us.
actually like
Yeah.
a good guy. And I just was never comfortable.
Yeah, how in your face to get. Okay, so yes, Sam Ellis, Lauren Sherman, Kevin Alejandro. Wow. Oh yeah, Satan, he's so accessible. Lucifer, whatever. Same shit.
Yeah.
This could have been you, Arden. You could have been on here if you didn't have your pesky gut
Moral
reaction,
compass. Yeah.
your pesky moral comforts. But is it worth it?
All right, so that's pretty much the end of that interview. We're gonna leave it there. Yeah, key takeaways if anybody is like a younger person, looking to, get into Hollywood or into, being a social media influencer, just beware of these traps because fame and fortune, they definitely do um uh, you know, play on a person's mind and make them want to go further down that rabbit hole and see how much fame or fortune they can attain. But you really got to be careful with that because it leads down a dark path. And it's not God's way. God doesn't want that for you. God has a bigger purpose for you. So look for that. Look for what his purpose is for you. But also, too, just be mindful of if you do get into that industry or whatever, influencing on social media, you don't have to. It's good to have boundaries and it's good to have standards, and you don't have to sell yourself or your soul or your body or whatever to get to where you want to go. You can find another path. It might be a little bit harder, it might take a little bit longer, but you can find another path. You don't have to go that way. So stay true to your values, stay true to your principles, your standards, whatever it is that you set your boundaries to be, and just follow your gut instinct. Don't let anybody ever take that from you. Okay, that's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And yeah, check out the show notes for more. All right, I just want to take a moment to remind you about my children's book, Little Boy Full of Love. This is the children's book that I wrote. That's me on the back. And of course, this is a sneak peek on the inside. It's a great book. I wrote this book for my son. It's a wonderful children's book that teaches a lot of great life lessons. If you're a parent, this is definitely a great book for you to get for your child or somebody that you want to gift this to. It's available on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Indigo, Bookshop.org, all of the, pretty much major online platforms. But more importantly to me, it's available in a lot of physical bookstores throughout the country. We're in about 15 or 16 different states right now. And you can find out which states and which bookstores specifically are carrying it near you on my Instagram page. You'll be able to see the stores and their addresses there. So if you are close to one and you want to pick up a copy, I recommend picking it up directly from the bookstore. It helps that small business and it helps us as well. And but if not, if you want to get it online, you could actually find it, like I said, on all those platforms. But it's also available on our Amazon storefront. Information for that is in the show notes, and the links are in my bio as well. And we also have a lot of other products on there that we highly recommend that we use in our daily lives. So check that out. It's all categorized, so it's easy to shop and browse through. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff on there. So check out the Amazon storefront, the apparel shop, and all that good stuff in the show notes and the links in my bio. All right, that's it. Stay tuned for the next one.